Thanks everybody for being here bright and early. Appreciate my colleagues being here, and Rob, thanks for being here. I'd like to welcome today's panel on the efforts of the Department of Defense to generate auditable financial statements. In our first hearing, we received testimony on DoD strategy. I don't think I'll ever be able to say that word, strategy, and I don't think President Bush actually ever said that, but methodology to achieving audit readiness by 2017 and on the challenges it faces in achieving that goal. Today, we'll hear from various DoD components on their approach to implementing the DoD financial improvement strategy and methodology. We'll delve somewhat deeper into the challenges faced at the component level and hear how the components are incorporating lessons learned from ongoing audits in their audit readiness plans. Although there is a standard methodology that DoD components must follow to guide their audit readiness efforts, their approaches to achieving audit readiness may vary from component to component. We're interested in hearing about each component's approach to achieving financial statement auditability by 2017. It's widely recognized that the successful implementation of the enterprise resource planning systems is key to DoD's ability to achieve audit readiness. In my examination of this issue, one thing is clear: we can't afford the cost overruns, continued cost overruns, and schedule slippages that have plagued these systems to date if DoD is in fact going to be ready by 2017. However, as our witnesses noted testimony before this panel in late July, new IT systems alone will not guarantee auditability. The DoD must improve its business processes. Hopefully today's hearing will shed some light on how the various components are doing in both of these regards. Although the military departments are not yet auditable, DoD has made some progress toward this goal. For example, 6 smaller departmental organizations, including the Corps of Engineers, have received clean audit opinions, and the Marine Corps is undergoing an audit of its statement of budgetary resources as we speak. The military departments must leverage the lessons learned from these efforts into their audit readiness plans. I hope our discussions here today will assist in that information exchange and bring to light some good news with respect to the department's efforts to produce financial statements that we and the taxpayers can have confidence in. With that, I'd like to thank our witnesses for taking time out of their schedules to be with us this morning. We have today the Honorable Mary Sally Matea. Paul and I were working on that, Mary Sally, and we just, Matea. The Assistant Secretary of the Army, Financial Management Controller, the Honorable Gladys Commons, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Financial Management Controller, Ms. Carol Spangler, the Assistant Deputy Commandant, Programs, Resources, United States Marine Corps, the Honorable Dr. Jamie Moran, Assistant Secretary of the Air Force, Financial Management Comptroller, and Mr. Wesley Miller, Director of Resource Management, Corps of Engineers. I'd now like to turn to my good colleague, Rob Andrews, for any remarks that he has at this point. Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good to have you all with us this morning. We appreciate your preparation, and I'm sure this is a hearing where we'll all be able to learn something. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your aggressive schedule on moving our work forward. I expected nothing less, and I'm happy to be a part of it. Since the panel last met, we've made a very important decision as Congress and as country, and that is that it's rather certain that irrespective of who's in the executive branch or the Congress, there will be very important decisions about defense spending made over the course of the next decade. The law as we sit here this morning is that we're facing either a very significant reduction because of sequestration, or we're facing an agreement that in all likelihood will contain some further reductions in defense spending if there is one. These are grave and important decisions any way you slice it. And the question here is not whether we're going to make these decisions. The question is whether we're going to make them based on good evidence or insufficient evidence. And the country would be ill-served if we make these decisions based on insufficient evidence. And we will make them based on insufficient evidence if we don't have auditable financial statements throughout the department. This is not just another academic exercise where people debate the metaphysical question of whether auditable statements are a good thing or a bad thing. This is for real. Because as I say, irrespective of who's running the executive branch or the Congress, there are going to be very consequential decisions that literally affect the life and death of the men and women who serve and affect the security of the country. So I think this gives a new urgency to the task of this panel and of the ladies and gentlemen who will testify this morning to put ourselves in a position where we as a Congress and a country have in front of us the correct body of evidence to begin to make decisions about where our investments should be and where they shouldn't be and how they should be altered. With that framework, I do think we've seen some real progress. Mr. Hale's testimony the last time around, I think, laid out a very good roadmap to get to where we want to go. And this morning we begin our process of getting into the specifics, into the weeds, if you will, of how to get there. That you, ladies and gentlemen, are the people responsible for getting us there, and we're interested in hearing how far you've gotten and when you're going to get to where we need to go, and what obstacles may stand in the way between here and there. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. I look forward to hearing from the witnesses.
All right. Thank you, Rob. I'd ask unanimous consent that non-panel members, specifically Tim Griffin, be allowed to participate in today's panel. Is there objection? Without objection, non-panel members will be recognized at the appropriate time for 5 minutes. Mary Sally, your turn.
And our commitment to achieving auditable financial statements. Secretary McHugh, the Chief of Staff of the Army Ordierno, Secretary Westphal, our Chief Management Officer, and all our senior leaders recognize the value and the importance of achieving the mandate of fiscal year 2010 National Defense Authorization Act, which requires the Army to be audit ready by September 30th, 2017. The Army employs hard-working soldiers and civilians, personnel across all functional areas who are dedicated to achieving audit readiness goals. These professionals are transforming our financial and business systems to improve financial management, provide timely, accurate, and relevant information for decision makers, and reassure American taxpayers and Congress the Army is a trustworthy steward of public funds. I am confident that we will be audit ready by September 30th, 2017. Because we have a sound and resource financial improvement plan conforming to the Department's financial improvement and audit readiness criteria, a solid enterprise resource planning strategy guiding our business systems development and deployments, and an effective governance oversight and structure ensuring accountability. Our financial improvement plan is fully resourced, contains detailed corrective actions and milestones, identifies accountable organizations, incorporates lessons learned from the Army Corps of Engineers and the Marine Corps audits, and aligns our business strategy. The plan emphasizes early and comprehensive evaluation and testing of management controls. This ensures the controls vital to audit readiness are in place and operating effectively as soon as possible. We ensure that we are audit ready by September 17th. Our improvement plan calls for annual audit examinations by an independent public accounting firm each year from fiscal year 2011 to 2014. These examinations on management and information technology system controls and business processes in the ERP environment. The accounting firms conducting these examinations will identify deficiencies and issue corrective actions. These examinations will enable us to correct deficiencies early enough to meet our audit goals for an assertion of the General Fund Statement of Budgetary Resources in fiscal year 2015 and assertion of all financial statements in fiscal year 2017. These audit exams will also condition the Army on how to support financial statement audits and ensure our audit readiness strategy is sound and remains on schedule. Each year, we are repeating a cycle of assessing, testing, identifying deficiencies, and implementing corrective actions. Additionally, each audit exam expands its scope by covering additional audit installations, processes, and systems each time we do a different wave. The audit examination is currently in process at 3 installations and Army headquarters and covers several business processes executed in the ERP environment. We recently completed an examination of appropriations received, which resulted in an unqualified audit opinion from an independent auditor, thus confirming our ability to receive and account for nearly $230 billion of appropriations. Army Army senior leaders provide governance and oversight of our audit readiness efforts and hold personnel accountable for achieving specific milestones. Accordingly, audit readiness performance criteria will be included in our senior executive performance plan starting in October in fiscal year 2012. Examination of our fiscal improvement plan and enterprise resource planning strategy combined with senior level governance and oversight will enable the Army to be audit ready by September 2017. I am personally committed to meeting our national security objectives and mandates of law requiring auditability. I look forward to continued collaboration with members of this panel, your counterparts in the Senate, GAO, Comptroller Hale, and DCMO McGrath to ensure the continued improvement of the Army's business environment. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks very much, Sally. Ms. Cummins?
Good morning. Chairman Conaway, Congressman Andrews, members of the panel, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Department of Navy's effort to achieve financial audit readiness. Thank you. Congressman Conaway, I want to personally thank you for your support and the interest that you have shown in our efforts to improve financial management. The Department is fully committed to achieving financial auditability, and our senior leaders have provided the resources to do so. Secretary Hale has asked us to concentrate our efforts in two areas: the statement of budgetary resources and existence and completeness of high-value military equipment. Our plans reflect those priorities. As noted, the Marine Corps is in the second year of its audit of its statement of budgetary resources. It has been challenging, but we continue to make progress, and we have learned many lessons from that audit. We have incorporated those lessons in the overall department's financial improvement plan. We are also sharing these lessons with other departments. They include from the complex proving the accuracy of our beginning balances for all appropriations to the simple maintenance of our supporting documentation and separation of duties. We're making progress in other areas. The Department recently received an unqualified opinion on our appropriations received process examination conducted by a private audit firm. The Department of Defense Inspector General is examining the completeness and existence of high-value military equipment, for example, our ships, submarines, ballistic missiles, and satellites. That examination will be followed by an examination of the existence and completeness of our aircraft and ordnance inventory. We believe the outcome from these examinations will be positive as well. We're working with our service providers to ensure that we all understand what must be done and who is responsible. We've reached across the aisles to assign responsibility to our own business process owners, such as our human resource and acquisition organizations. We have met with every senior executive responsible for executing our business processes, and beginning in October, they will have an audit readiness objective in his or her performance plan. We're also engaging our general and flag officers through the Vice Chief of Naval Operations and the Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. Achieving auditability is challenging and there is much work to do, but our financial data is accurate, and I will give you an example. A few months ago, I received a letter from a former Navy employee who stated in his letter that he had not received full payment for a PCS move that was made a number of years ago. We were able to go into our accounting system, pull out the data, show him the fact that we indeed had made full payment for his PCS move. Now, when the auditors look at that, they would ask me, can you provide the actual PCS order? I may not have been able to provide the actual PCS order because it happened a number of years ago, but I was able to go into the accounting system and pull out the data to show that he had actually been paid in full for his permanent change of station movement. We are committed to this effort. We are making progress. Thank you for your interest and support of our efforts. I will be happy to answer any questions you might have as appropriate.
Thank you. Carol?
I don't have a separate statement. Thank you.
Sorry, that's right. Jamie Morin, your turn.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Andrews, and to all the members of the panel for the invitation and for the focus of this committee and over a sustained period of time on this important agenda. If I may, I'd like to just briefly summarize written testimony and put the statement in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Conway, I think that the lesson is clear that business as usual is the enemy of success in the audit readiness effort for the Department of Defense. Business as usual is not going to get the department where we need to go. And the focus of the senior leadership of the Department of Defense in response to the clear charge from this committee, from the Congress, and from the American people has helped get us out of the chain of business as usual. The Air Force is closely aligned with the strategy that Undersecretary Hale has laid out for a focus in audit readiness on the information that managers use to manage the department, building that positive feedback loop that comes from giving senior leaders the tools they need to do their job, refocusing our financial improvement and audit readiness plan on those elements that are most relevant to those day-to-day managerial challenges. It was a shift of focus for the Air Force, which had put a lot of effort into valuation and other balance sheet pieces of the effort. And so we are coming from a little bit behind, but we are making up ground quickly due to really strong support from senior leaders in the Air Force, including Secretary Donnelly and Undersecretary Connaughton, who's a good friend of this committee's, and, of course, our senior uniformed leadership. Just a month ago, Undersecretary Connaughton and Vice Chief of Staff General Breedlove jointly wrote all of the four-star commanders of the Air Force major commands to impress on them the criticality of building audit readiness into the performance plans of their senior executives across a wide range of functional responsibilities, pushing that effort down to command level and from there to base level, so it's not just a headquarters effort, and pushing that effort out across the numerous functional areas in the Air Force, so it's not just a financial management effort. This leadership from our Chief Management Officer and one of our senior military leaders has really helped us. I'm pleased that because of that leadership, we have made some real progress over the last year or so. Some of our wins include achieving audit readiness for our appropriations received, as the other services have, and our funds distribution process. I think that's critical to giving the American taxpayer confidence that resources are being allocated the way they're appropriated. We've also asserted our funds balance with Treasury reconciliation process. This is really balancing the Air Force's checkbook with the Department of Treasury. It's over 1 million transactions a month, and we're now reconciling it to 99.99% accuracy. A year ago, we couldn't reconcile it, so that's a significant step. We've made progress on some of our military equipment and other mission-critical assets as well, asserting audit readiness for existence and completeness of our full military equipment universe, our cruise missiles, and our aerial targets, which we treat as operating materials and supplies. Again, I think this progress directly comes from that intense commitment from our senior leadership, uniformed and civilian. We do have a long way to go. That's clear. And the 2017 deadline in law is going to be challenging for the Air Force because of the shift in focus from the more valuation-oriented effort, but also because of the IT acquisition challenges we face. We do see moderate risk, but with the high level of leadership commitment, we feel like we are on track to make the deadline. Our ability to achieve audit readiness really does depend on systems modernization. Right now, we're focused on fielding enterprise resource planning systems, a new accounting system called DEAMS, a new logistics system called ECSS, a new personnel system, and others. We're behind the other services in that regard, but that's been a benefit in many respects because we've been able to learn lessons from the experiences the other services have gone through. As a result, we've made a heavy focus on data cleanup. We've made a heavy focus on feeder systems. We've made a heavy focus on change management for the user community, and that has been helpful. We're not rushing wide deployment of these systems into the field, but we are using them in real terms. The Deems accounting system is the system of record at Scott Air Force Base, one of our large and complex bases. It's handling billions of dollars of transactions. Closed out last fiscal year successfully, and we will be finishing up this fiscal year. We'll assess that and move on to rolling that system out. ERPs are not a panacea. They're not a solution to all of our problems, but the Air Force is running right now based on 70s-era bookkeeping systems that will not get us to a clean audit. They do not have the transaction-based fidelity. They do not have the U.S. Standard General Ledger basis that we need to get there. So IT systems modernization is inescapably part of the Air Force effort. Again, we can't rely on business as usual to get us across the finish line here. We need clear accountability for individual executives. The Air Force has really been leading the way on that. We've got a number of senior leaders with direct financial tie in their performance plans to audit readiness this year and an even larger universe next year. We need that real investment in systems modernization. We need a responsive, effective acquisition process for those systems modernization efforts. Again, can't be stuck in business as usual of overcost, overschedule. And we need that involvement to stretch from the headquarters to the field and from the financial management community to the broader community. We're making good progress on all of those pieces, and that is due in part to the focus of this panel and of the Congress, for which I thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right. Mr. Miller. Excuse me, Mr. Miller.
Good morning, Congressman Conaway, Congressman Andrews, members of the panel. I'm Wes Miller, Director of Resource Management for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss Civil Works financial statement audits. The Corps of Engineers achieved a major milestone in fiscal year 2008 with the receipt of the first ever unqualified opinion from a major Department of Defense activity. Last year, we received our third consecutive unqualified audit opinion and anticipate a fourth this year. Our current audit firm is KPMG, with DoD Inspector General providing oversight. The Corps has been working on CFO compliance for over 20 years and has faced many challenges along the way. The biggest challenge in our first audit was providing documentation for over $28 billion of property, plant, and equipment. We overcame that challenge by using alternate supporting documentation approved by the Inspector General. We also encountered many challenges processing over 14,000 samples as well as meeting the accelerated reporting timelines. The key to overcoming all challenges was building a cohesive partnership with the auditors and working with them for solutions. From a lessons learned perspective, I would offer that the Corps of Engineers financial management system, which we refer to as CFMS, is a major factor in our audit success. The Corps developed CFMS as an enterprise financial management system that encompasses travel, training, timekeeping, acquisition, asset accountability, and fully integrated with the Corps' project and asset management accountability systems. Many of the Corps' internal controls are automated within CFMS, forcing 100% compliance. For fiscal year 11 audit, we expect to process approximately 4,000 samples, which is a huge reduction from the first audit. With the reduced sample testing, we have shifted our resources to improve our internal controls program. I recently signed our fiscal year 11 audit, internal audits over financial reporting letter with an unqualified assurance that our controls are operating effectively. I expect that our work on improving internal controls will result in most, if not all, of our auditor-reported material weaknesses being cleared in this fiscal year. That's our #1 priority. Thank you for inviting me here today. I look forward to any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank all your panel members for coming here and the preparation time you put into making this happen. I'm not sure how you got all those people here behind you, but apparently there's some interest in your squads as to what you were going to say this morning. We'll now go on the 5-minute clock. So questions, I'll start us off. One of the things that it may just be a problem I have is that we have legacy systems out there. Mr. Moran, you mentioned in your written statement that if it looks like you're not going to make it to 2017, you're developing contingency plans to audit those systems. We talk about that in a little bit, but is tracking the demise of legacy systems one of the metrics that we should be looking at as we try to evaluate the progress that you're making? In other words, at this stage in the arrangement, I would expect you to be able to point to those legacy systems which will no longer be needed once you get to where you want to get to. And it would seem that if those continue on beyond that point, that you are putting in place a system that's not sustainable. We may be able to get that one-time audit or whatever, but you're putting so is any of the panel members want to comment on that, and that is how you track in effect, the demise of these legacy systems as they're replaced by the others?
Chairman Conaway, I'll take that question. In implementing our ERP at our major acquisition commands, we believe that we will be able to eliminate 96 legacy systems by the end of 2016. We know that we've already eliminated 14. We think we'll do another 11 this fiscal year. So we are tracking whether or not we are able to eliminate those legacy systems. One thing that I'd like to highlight, however, is that much of the data that is contained in some of the legacy systems we need to keep. For example, shipbuilding is a 5-year appropriation and it expends much longer, 10, 12 years in some instances. So converting all of that data to a new system is very expensive. We chose in some instances to keep that information into the legacy system until such time as those appropriations spend out. So we are tracking.
Okay. Air Force, Army?
Our strategy right now as we roll out GFIBs, which is our new accounting system, is we are inputting, as we put GFIBs into an installation, we only record new data into GFIBs, and the old data stays in StanFINS, which is our old accounting system. But at a date certain, which would be something that you could track, the metric that you're talking about, at a date certain by 2015, when we have fully deployed GFIBs, we are going to start working on bringing the old balances from the systems, the ones that are still applicable, because many of those would have already deobligated, but the lingering balances in StanFINS, and we're gonna bring them over into GFIBs. So we are tracking. We do have a strategy where we're concentrating on new data in GFIBs, but at some point, a date certain, in 2015, we're going to start moving the old data into the new system. Right now, we're just concentrating on making sure that the new system is working, that we're training people correctly, and and we will worry about moving the beginning balances after we feel like we've got a stable environment in GFIBs.
Jamie, as you answer yours, one of the things in looking at the three services, your timeline gets you right at the bucket and right at 2017. The other two services or at least have plans in place to get it done sooner, so that if they have slippage and it doesn't go as planned, they've got a window of opportunity to make that work. Address the fact that the Air Force has got it right on the dime, and that means no slippage.
Yes, sir. I think I'll begin with the fact that in the dialogue between this committee, and the Department of Defense, the Air Force was the pacing factor that led the Department of Defense to provide you with the schedule that got to 2017, so that it's not by happenstance that we're on the edge. We gave you the most aggressive deadline we could given that schedule, but it leaves us, as you said, with very little room for slippage, and we're very cognizant of that. As a result, we're pushing now what I would call a belt and suspenders type approach, and you mentioned the line in my written testimony on that we are both pursuing our IT systems modernization through our ERP strategy, where we are definitely planning to replace a number of systems, and we're tracking them as they come out, although the fact that we're rolling out many of these systems geographically means that the actual retirement of the replaced systems will not come until we've covered the full geography of the Air Force. But we're modernizing with the ERPs, and then we are also looking carefully at our legacy systems, the ones that can be remediated. Not all of them can, and so for those we will be reliant on the ERPs. But in certain cases, relatively cost-effective investments in existing legacy systems will get us the trail that we need to have clean financial input to the underlying accounting system. So we're focused on that very closely and watching those interdependencies. One final point, which is that in the early stages of the Air Force audit readiness effort, we perhaps bit off more than we could chew with some of those systems modernizations. Our ECSS effort, was originally planned to replace, I believe, 240 IT systems. That was probably too much scope, and over the more than 5-year history of that program, it has now been tailored and moved into smaller increments and releases of capability, because trying to replace 240 systems at once strained the planning and execution capability of an institution of our size.
Thank you. Rob, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Montiella, I understand in December of this calendar year, the Army is going to match GFEBs against the GAO's sort of audit manual to see how it stacks up. Do you have any early indications to how GFEBs is going to stack up?
I believe that we're going to be very successful. We've been working very hard to make sure that GFIBS is meeting the criteria that's required, that it's got all the general ledger accounts that it requires. So I believe at this point that GFIBS is going to be successful and being able to meet the IGs and all of the other regulation requirements.
What's the plan B? I mean, because it seems that so much of the Army's efforts for the audit compliance depends upon GFIBS really working the way you want it to. Is there some sort of fire drill ready if there are deficiencies found in December of this year?
Well, we're just going to, it's resourced. We've got the resources there to fix what's broken. And so at this point, we plan on fully deploying GFIBS by July of next year. We've got a lot of major commands that are fully on GFIBS at this point. So we're sticking to Plan A, and at this point, what we see is GFIBS is working. There are no data integrity problems. We do have to, maybe slice and dice the data within GFIBS into different accounts, but we believe it's going to work, and so we're very hopeful of that.
With the Chairman's permission, I think that the panel would probably like to have a report after your December review, a letter or some kind of written report to let us know how you're doing, because I think that's a very pivotal midpoint.
More than happy.
Secretary, thank you. Secretary Commons, I loved your story about the person who wrote in and thought he was underpaid. Usually they write to me or us, so I'm glad it was you instead. How long did it take you to, when you asked that question, how long did it take you to get the answer?
Well, actually, not very long, within a day or two.
Yeah.
Our systems, our accounting systems, for many years have been at the transaction level detail. So we are able to go in and look at data. Our issue is pulling that data out for the auditors.
Got it.
So, but we've been at the transaction detail level for
That's
many
good. I want to ask you a more subjective question based upon your professional judgment. How would you place the probability that Navy will get to that 2017 deadline? How probable is it?
I am very optimistic. Our deadline that we have set for ourselves is fiscal year 2013. So I believe we will have ample time to make whatever corrections we need to make to meet the 2017 deadline. We are pushing very hard. We're not slipping our deadline. We're trying to stick to it and forcing the issues to make sure that we meet the 2017 deadline.
I appreciate that. And Dr. Morin, you've spoken with great detail about the systems modernization challenges that the Air Force has to get to where we need to go. Are there any others in addition to systems modernization that you think are potential roadblocks to getting to the deadline?
Well, there's absolutely a range of other challenges. We have it's people, it's processes, and it's systems, and they've got to work in concert. What we've found as we've rolled out DEAMS at Scott Air Force Base is, in many cases, doing financial management business in an auditable, solid system is harder work than doing it in a legacy system. You can't just enter 7 nines in a field and have the system pass the funding document through. So we've had to do a lot of additional training, a lot of hand-holding as we get our workforce up on this system. And there's education required as to the strategic importance of this.
How are you handling the employee education to get your employees up to speed on what they have to do?
We have a very deliberate and careful change management process that starts months and months in advance of turning the system on.
Who does the educating? Is it a vendor? Or is it in-house? How do you do that?
It's a mixed force. We have a functional management office that is made up of seasoned financial managers that provides the detailed subject matter expertise. A lot of the training is done by contract support, but it depends on exactly the level of training.
Thank you. And then very quickly, Mr. Miller, I saw you had a recommendation or a thought about the 45-day window at the end of the fiscal year. Do you think there should be a longer window for that compliance? If so, what should it be?
In the first year audit, sir, that is very difficult to make. After that, you're working towards that 45-day window, and it is workable, and we have achieved it each of the last 3 years.
What do you think it should be in the first year?
Sir, I think that first audit, it's going to take 4 to 5 months in order to get the results from that first audit.
Some of us just hope that the Corps has some money to be audited next year. That's a different problem. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Rob. Scott, 5 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here bright and early, and all the staff. We really appreciate that. I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing. I think there is a deep resolve to move this forward, and just as a fellow American, I thank you for that. We need to use our monies wisely. It seems like there was a common theme in your opening remarks that incorporating an assessment of the senior leadership, the executives, is starting to pay some benefit there. And I can tell you from my private sector experience that this is a good thing. I have routinely sat down with general managers of operating components and said, we're going to go through this general ledger. And they say, well, I've never done that before. And I say, well, this is how we run this business. And I said, I'm not trying to make an accountant out of you, but you need to have a working knowledge of what you've been entrusted with. And it's always been very helpful, so I encourage you to pursue that. Now, with that in mind, you always wonder, okay, well, how are you establishing a bench line? Let's say I'm a hard-charging colonel, and Afghanistan come back, they reward me with a base. I'm a 1-star now. I walk on the base. I don't know what I've inherited with respect to accounting. So how do you establish that baseline, and how do you judge his or her performance at the end of his or her time? And I just would direct that to the panel there, whoever would like to comment.
First, we are indeed working with our flag and general officers as well. In fact, the Commandant of the Marine Corps believes that this is so important. He has invited us to come and talk to his 3-star and above general officers to explain to them exactly what is needed for financial audit readiness. Also, the Vice Chief of Naval Operations has offered the same for his flag officers, that we come and talk to them about the importance of audit readiness. So we believe that we do have the support of the senior leaders of the department. We take advantage of every opportunity to talk to senior leaders. I, in fact, went over and talked to our senior executives within the Department of the Navy, explained to them their role in this process. And again, we have visited or talked to every senior executive within the Department of the Navy who influences the business processes to tell them of their importance and the role that they play. because I think that is the key, that they understand the role that they play in reaching financial audit readiness.
Well, a follow-up then might be if you could provide the certainly me and maybe the panel here with copies of that performance appraisal, not of course not specific to a person, but just the generic one. I'd like to see what we're asking of our senior officers and how we're going about that. And also, I think you may want to consider, since you're having real success in this area, and it's helping, if we could establish a culture even earlier on. If you've got your 3 stars, that's great, but over time, to develop that to where we're instilling that is at junior and mid-level officers and senior NCOs, that this is just part of your duty. We don't want to take the warrior out of you. We don't want to do that, and I think we need to be careful about how we approach these things, but certainly being accountable for the assets that have been entrusted to them is a good thing. As we move along this process, and wouldn't we all love to fast forward the tape to 2013 or 2017 and just see how we all did, but those measurable benchmarks along the way, I trust those are clearly defined and will be informed along the way. And is there any third party, my final question, is there any third party, Ms. Moore, and I'll direct this to you, sir, is there any third party that would come along and say, no, there really aren't meeting that, and alarm bells would go off, and so we could take action?
Third-party validation is critical to, obviously, to any audit effort. We are relying on a series of third-party validators. For example, for our appropriations received assertion, we brought in an independent public accounting firm to do a examination of that, and we've received their unqualified opinion, and that's giving us confidence that we fixed the issues there. We also use the Inspector General. We use the DoD Inspector General for a portion of our examinations, and we use the Air Force Audit Agency as well. All of those bodies maintain a sufficient level of independence, but we need to do a very good job of providing those interim metrics, and we have plans with literally thousands of line items of action.
Thank you.
Some of them will slip.
My time has expired. I just want to, out of respect to the chairman, thank you, sir, very much.
Thanks, Scott. Ms. Courtney for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I just have one quick question, Secretary Commons. You mentioned in your testimony that right now the Navy is going through an audit with the Inspector General. And it's really, and I apologize for sort of talking about or spending time on an issue that most people probably know standing on their head. But, I mean, is that an audit that is just random, or is that a regular audit, or is that something that you guys just sort of suddenly get a letter in the mail that, like the IRS?
No, this is actually an examination to prove out that we say that we're ready for audit of completeness and existence of our high-value military equipment. The DoD IG is actually coming behind and verifying that the statement that I made is true, that we are already there. So they're auditing that. They're going out. They're looking to see that the ships that are on our inventory are actually there and recorded.
And how long a process is that?
We believe that this should take only a couple of months to complete this audit, but I don't control the IG time frame.
Right.
I just respond to them.
Mm-hmm. And so if this effort to hit the 2017 target with these new systems is successful, I mean, will that moot this sort of Inspector General process, or will it just make it easier to comply with?
What we're actually trying to do is to get the auditor's lens on our processes as quickly as possible to confirm that the actions that we have taken are in fact successful. That gives us confidence to move to the next area that we need to work on. And so it is merely an examination to prove out the fact that, yes, your processes are good there. You're fully auditable in that area. When we have completed this entire process and will be ready for audit of the full statement, there will just be one audit.
Okay. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Ms. Courtney. Ms. Palazzo for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank the witnesses for being here today to continue this extremely important conversation. In the essence of time, and I know my colleagues to the right of me have some questions, and there will probably be some closing remarks. I'll try to keep this brief. This is for everybody. Do you believe that, there are certain lessons learned as we go through this process. It's a huge attempt to prepare the services to become audit ready. And we've had to look at ERP and updating our legacy systems to more modern technology. And quite honestly, that as a CPA and a former business owner, I'm still with the same tax preparation software, and will probably be until they discontinue it, just because I fear that change and that deliberative change management. And and we finally got the system tweaked, even though it's not the best. Anyway, I'm digressing, so I didn't want to do that. Do you see that these lessons learned, CPAs have a habit of doing that, do you see that these lessons learned are applicable to all the services, or do you think each service is so unique and so separate that we have to give, and I know there's probably a certain amount of individual attention, but do you think these lessons learned that, say, the Corps of Engineers will be applicable to the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force? So
I'd like to answer that.
Yes.
I believe that lessons learned are applicable across. I went through an audit with the Forest Service. We got our first clean opinion while I was CFO there. Those lessons learned are things that we're struggling here. It's about change management. It's about training. It's about having the right systems. It's about knowing how to be auditable, how to communicate with the auditors. Internal controls are important. So there's a lot of lessons learned, and Wes here will also talk about that. But this is why we're looking at the folks that are under auditability. But you can go into not only inside of DOD, outside of DOD, and have the same lessons learned. They're very applicable.
And also, are y'all communicating between the services the lessons learned and the best practices?
Sir, I go on the road quite a bit and talk about the lessons learned from our audit. I say there are 4 things that were critical from us and that we learned. First of all, there needs to be a CFO culture that you have there. You have to have competent people, one, but you also have to have individuals that expect to be checked. Individuals will do best what they know is going to be checked. So bringing in an external auditor in is very helpful as far as the audit program. Second point, as far as having that financial management system that provides the detail and the transactional fidelity that you need to have there. The third item is the command support. The command has to be behind you 100%. It's just not the resource management community that enforces the audit, but it has to be the command. They have to buy into standards and enforcing those standards when they need be. And then the final element is, as far as when we conduct the audit, is that it is work conducting that audit. You have to be there with the auditors, hand in hand, understanding their particular position, getting them to understand your position and why your processes are the way that they are. And I think those are applicable to all services, sir.
Anybody else?
Yes. Congressman, if I could, I think it's fair to say that DOD as a whole and each of the services have closely looked at the success of the Army Corps of Engineers, and we've used that to structure a lot of our governance process. So each of the services has a cross-functional team chaired by the CFO that is responsible for bringing together that command support and that set of knowledge across the functions of a headquarters and an operation. So we've really looked aggressively at that. The Marine Corps audit, obviously still a work in progress, but an important piece of progress. Our staffs and we individually have had a number of interactions at a detailed level going through the recommendations that came out of that. In particular, these are important for me at the Air Force because of our tight timeline. We can't afford to learn lessons by making mistakes ourselves. We have to learn lessons by viewing others' successes and failures.
Well, that's admirable. I appreciate the fact that y'all are sharing lessons learned, best practices, and everything else. And it's also admirable that y'all are taking on such a monumental task. Just a small CPA firm and the fear of the new technology and changing. So it's just wonderful to see that y'all are doing this. And at the end, we're going to be able to achieve audit readiness. So I think that's wonderful. Thank you.
Someone yields back. Our rules are a little ill-defined, but I'll go to Mr. Griffin first, since he was here on time. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you holding this hearing, and thank you all y'all for coming early. I really appreciate it. I just did a whole lot of town halls over the break or the vacation, as it was called. I didn't get the memo on that one, but I talk about the fact that DOD has had this problem with being audit ready, and when I'm discussing it, folks understand that, but they always want to know, well, what are the consequences of that? And we've heard a lot of talk here about the systems, and I know that's what y'all are focused on. But could you talk a little bit in layman's terms what the negative consequences has been with DOD not being audit ready? I know that the general narrative of some of the discussion this morning has been that we are not technically audit ready, but we have the data somewhere, and that's often the case. But there are real life negative, wasteful consequences to not being audit ready, or DOD not being audit ready. Can y'all give some examples that I could use back home to explain why this is a problem for DOD, and it's not just a function of technical compliance, that there really is an impact in terms of taxpayers' dollars? Anybody have anything to share on that?
I'll take a stab at that. First of all, our systems were never designed to do proprietary accounting the way that we're being asked to do it today. They were designed for budgetary accounting, and quite frankly, we believe we do that very well. We do not have Anti-Deficiency Act violations, as we have some, but not as many as you find in some of the other agencies. Our processes, our business processes, were not designed from end to end. In other words, if you were in the civilian personnel business, your system was designed to support hiring, getting people on board, and making sure that they were in the system. It was not necessarily coordinated with the financial system. So what we need to do is to look at our end-to-end processes. What the auditors do when they come in to look at our books, they will say, I see from your financial records that you are paying an employee. What I would now like to look at is the supporting data supporting that entry in the accounting system. The supporting data is, in fact, a personnel action, be it from an SF-52 or a 50. So when you go back, you're going to the personnel people to say, give me that supporting documentation. Our processes have not been optimized in that way, but that is where we're going, to optimize those processes, make sure that the linkages between the various business owners is there, so that when the auditors come, I can show them from end to end. This is the transaction in the accounting system. This is the supporting documentation for that transaction, and they can look at our entire process. That is what we have not yet done and what we're working toward.
So you would say to my constituents that in many cases this is more of a technical problem and does not reflect on a situation where you're unable to track money. This has more to do with being able to know in the ins and outs of the money being spent money coming in and being able to manage it better in the future. It does not reflect a situation where you just don't know where the money is. Is that correct?
That is correct. Absolutely. I believe we know where the money is. I think what this does for us, by going down to the transaction level of detail, it reinforces the fact that the summary level data that we have can be relied upon by our decision makers.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Young for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank our Assistant Secretaries, our Assistant Deputy Commandant very much for being here this morning. I was struck by a couple of different trends that I picked up, not just here today, but in some of the previous hearings we've had. First is the collaborative, cross-departmental effort to become audit ready, to achieve those clean audit opinions. And then second is the very different audit readiness goals that we find across departments. So we'd like to briefly dig into each of those. First, I was encouraged by the Corps of Engineers' efforts to educate everyone on what they regard as lessons learned, best practices. And I wanted to see if there are any specific examples of changes that your departments have made, following some of those different consultations. Specifically, if you can speak to, if anyone can speak to this integrated financial management system. Is that something that can be overlaid into another department very easily? I mean, that seems like it requires quite an investment of both time and money to improve that. And we've heard some talk about systems, and I'm sort of getting my sea legs, as we say in the Navy, with some of this material. But if you could speak to those lessons learned and changes made right now, I'd appreciate that. Anyone?
Sir,
Go ahead.
Concerning the use of CFMs as far as in other areas, that has in fact been tried. And it is a very specific system that is designed in order to do project-based accounting. So it's very, very good as far as for construction, but it isn't for general fund type of accounting that the other services would need.
Okay. All right.
One of the huge lessons learned that we got from the Army Corps of Engineers is how to manage an audit. An audit itself is a lot of work. For example, I like to estimate for how many samples we would get to have to support in an audit, and I'm thinking it's about 150,000 samples just with the magnitude. That's a huge amount of work. So how do you manage that work so that you can come up with an opinion in that 45-day window? Of course, you start the audit way before the end of the fiscal year. So there's a lot of lessons on audit governance and how you communicate with the field and how you keep track of deliverables and how you keep folks accountable for deliverables, timeframes that are involved, and also developing business rules on what is good supporting documentation. That's a huge one that you can establish with the auditors way ahead of time. Is what is it they expect and what is an appropriate level of work effort and support for a sample. So there's, in terms of how to negotiate an audit and do it well and efficiently and on time and on cost, is a huge lesson that we've learned from the Corps of Engineers.
Thank you.
I would say that certainly we learned from the Corps of Engineers that we needed an efficient process to retrieve and provide to the auditors large amounts of source documentation. When the Marine Corps went to audit, they took that lesson learned to heart, and they actually developed an automated process using SharePoint server technology. So we are, in fact, learning from each other as we go through the audit process, and we are putting those lessons to use.
We've got about 1:20 left, so I'm going to allow one person to take a stab at this one. But I'm struck, though, by the fact, as I said earlier, that we've got different departments here learning from the lessons of the Corps and from others. But we have very divergent, very different audit readiness goals. And to what do you attribute that?
Quite frankly, we are at different stages of audit readiness. As we noted, the Marine Corps is already under audit. We have done things in the Navy that we may be a little farther ahead of the other departments. So it is a matter of what stage you are in the audit readiness. That really sort of dictates the plan for us.
And, sir, if I may add, I think another key piece is that the services and the defense agencies are in different places with regard to their IT support. So that the Navy is starting from what is fundamentally a sound accounting system that they fielded a decade or so ago. The Air Force is starting from a bookkeeping system that was fielded in the early 70s. So different prerequisites have to be worked with.
Thank you.
Well, Rob, anything else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just briefly, I think it was Mr. Miller who used the phrase CFO culture. Was that your phrase? I like that one. And I think it's a good summary of what we're trying to accomplish here on the panel and what you, ladies and gentlemen, are accomplishing out in your work, which we appreciate. You said that if you expect to be audited, you begin to change your behavior. Members of Congress would be wise to maybe keep that in mind, too. And our objective on this panel is to, in effect, audit the auditors. We want to keep in touch with you. We want to hear about your progress. And as that culture filters down through the agencies, I think we will find ourselves in a much better position to understand what we are doing and make informed judgments. Chairman, I give you credit that your single-minded devotion to making this happen is the reason we're hearing about this progress today. And you have my commitment that we will continue to work with you and with the ladies and gentlemen we've heard from today to move even further down the road so we achieve that day when each of these entities has an auditable financial statement, achieves that unqualified opinion, and I think we will have accomplished something of real value. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Rob. I was also encouraged by Jamie's comments that you don't necessarily have to make all the mistakes yourself, that you can learn from each other. Each of these audit processes will come with a report by the auditor at the end of the deal as to where you need to improve, a formal system for sharing those among some proper level at your team so that you don't, in fact, have to reinvent the wheel and each time that something is disclosed, that you can learn from those issues. This team on our side of the panel will be better informed this time next year. We'll have a lot better sense of, since we're putting this work together now, as to how much progress is being made. Mr. Miller, you mentioned that you do what gets checked. Having performance evaluation metrics in each of the senior executives' performance plan for next year, somebody, Rob and I or somebody, is going to be interested in looking at how that worked. Are there, in fact, consequences to doing the job that you were asked to do and charged with doing, and are there consequences for where that did not get done in a variety of reasons? So we will be checking those kinds of things, and our side will be in a better information, we'll have a better foundation of being able to evaluate how this progress is going. This is not us against you, obviously. That's not intended in any way to be there, but we've got a role, and you have one as well. This has been one of our more productive hours spent together, and I appreciate each of you coming in and reaching out to us ahead of time as well, either in August or this past week or so, so thank you for that. If there are things that we can do that to address things that are standing in your way, legal issues, other things that are there, we have an open door as to how we get that addressed. One of the things that Rob and I will be watching is how the various agencies are resourced in your efforts. Each of you have said at this stage you believe you're properly resourced to get the job done. In this era of cutting spending, sometimes that can impact this, and so we'll be watching to make sure that these efforts are resourced so that we do in fact get to a point that, and we talk about the audit, but the real issue is day in and day out, data generation systems, management information systems, and internal control systems that generate all of this and allow a once a year, quick good housekeeping, good housekeeping seal of approval to be laid on this deal. But it's really about the sustained information systems and flow of information that decision makers will need on both sides of our respective responsibilities that are there. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming this morning. If there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.